Arun lived on a quiet moon far from the busy human colonies. His small outpost stood at the edge of a wide plain where the sky stayed pale and the stars looked close enough to touch. He had chosen this place because silence gave him comfort. Most people searched for crowded cities, glowing lights, and endless noise, but Arun preferred the sound of wind moving across stone and the soft hum of machines that kept him alive. Each morning he rose before the faint sun lifted above the horizon. He brewed his simple meal and checked the power systems. The solar panels stretched like dark wings outside the outpost, and he cleaned them carefully, removing the fine dust that gathered each night. The machines were his companions, and he treated them with respect. When a wire sparked, he calmed it as if speaking to a restless friend. When a pipe leaked, he sealed it with patience, whispering that all would be well. Arun kept a small journal, writing each day with a steady hand. He wrote about the colors of the sky, the faint changes in the air, and his own thoughts that wandered like travelers without a road. No one read his words, but he still wrote. The act gave him peace, as if he were speaking to a future self who would one day look back and understand. Though alone, Arun never felt abandoned. He carried memories of his family and friends, but he had chosen distance from them. Crowded voices had pressed on his mind, and he longed for a life where silence could heal him. The moon gave him that gift. Sometimes he wondered if the universe itself had called him here, for the nights were so clear that he felt the stars were listening. One evening, after a long day repairing an air filter, Arun sat outside on a rock facing the horizon. The sky was glowing with a thin band of silver. He closed his eyes and listened to the wind. The sound carried a rhythm like a distant song. For a moment he imagined that someone unseen was speaking to him, not with words but with presence. He shook his head, telling himself it was only his tired mind playing tricks. Yet the feeling lingered, soft and heavy like a hand on his shoulder. Life on the moon was simple but never easy. Supplies came once every season from a cargo ship that dropped crates of food, medicine, and tools. The pilot rarely stayed long, and Arun often spoke only a handful of words during those visits. The silence returned as soon as the ship vanished into the sky. Many would have gone mad from such isolation, but Arun found balance in it. He was not running from life, he was searching for a kind of truth hidden beneath noise. At night, Arun slept in a narrow bed inside the outpost. The walls were lined with glowing panels that kept the air warm. He would read old books stored on a tablet before closing his eyes. Stories of ancient heroes, forgotten empires, and distant stars filled his mind. Often he wondered if humans were meant to wander alone or always in groups. He thought perhaps both paths held meaning, for in solitude one discovered the self, and in company one discovered the world. But there were moments when a quiet ache filled his chest. He would look at the empty chair across his table and imagine another voice filling the silence. He would hear his own laughter echo without answer and feel the weight of emptiness. These feelings came like passing storms, strong but brief. When they faded, he returned to his calm routine. Still, somewhere deep, a part of him wished for a sign that he was not entirely forgotten by the universe. One particular night, as he prepared to sleep, something strange occurred. The power in the outpost flickered though the systems were stable. Arun frowned, checked the control panel, and found no error. The lights dimmed, then brightened again, as if something unseen had brushed across the circuits. He touched the wall, feeling a faint vibration that was not part of the usual hum. It lasted only a breath before fading away. He stood for a long time in silence, listening, waiting. Nothing more happened, so he finally lay down. Sleep came quickly, but the dream that followed was unlike any he had known. He found himself standing in a vast hall made of crystal walls that shimmered with light. Shapes moved in the distance, tall and graceful, their eyes glowing like silver stars. They did not speak with voices, yet he felt their thoughts pressing gently into his mind. At the center of them stood a figure taller than the rest, wearing a crown that glowed with living fire. Her presence was heavy and soft at the same time, like the weight of the ocean and the touch of water. The figure stepped forward. Though her mouth did not move, Arun heard her words inside him. They were not in any human language, yet he understood. She said he was seen. She said he was chosen. Arun tried to ask why, but no sound came from his lips. The figure raised a hand, and a beam of light touched his chest. He felt warmth spread through his body, filling his heart with strength and fear at once. The dream ended as suddenly as it began. Arun woke with a gasp, sitting upright in his bed. His breath came heavy, his chest damp with sweat. For a moment he thought it had been only a dream, but when he pulled his shirt aside, his eyes widened. A faint mark glowed on his skin, right where the figure's light had touched him. It was not painted or burned. It shimmered faintly, like a star hidden beneath flesh. He touched the mark with trembling fingers. It did not hurt, but its presence shook him. Nothing in his life had ever been beyond reason, yet here was proof of something vast and unknown. He rose from bed, pacing across the room. Outside the window, the stars burned brighter than usual, as if watching him. Arun felt his solitude shift. The silence no longer seemed empty. It seemed to wait. That night, he did not return to sleep. He sat with his journal, writing down every detail of the dream, every image of the hall, the figures, and the queen with her crown of fire. His words came fast, filling pages until his hand ached. When he finished, he closed the journal and stared at the mark glowing faintly on his chest. Arun whispered softly to himself, a single question that the silence could not answer. Why him? And far above, beyond his sight, something vast was already moving closer. Arun did not sleep again after the dream. He spent the long hours of night moving between his journal and the window. The glow on his chest refused to fade, shining faintly like a buried star. Sometimes it pulsed, as if answering a rhythm that only it could hear. He pressed his hand against it, wondering if it was a trick of the mind, but the warmth under his skin told him otherwise. The following morning, he stepped outside the outpost. The air was cool, and the pale sun hung low on the horizon. He stood still, breathing deeply. Nothing in the landscape had changed, yet Arun felt different. The wind carried the same dry scent, the sky stretched wide and silent, but the world seemed alive in a way he had not noticed before. He felt as if unseen eyes were watching from every direction. Arun tried to return to his daily routine. He cleaned the solar panels, checked the water tanks, and repaired a loose valve on the air filter. His hands moved with skill, but his thoughts wandered. Every time he bent down or lifted a tool, the glowing mark reminded him of the dream. He replayed the vision again and again in his mind: the hall of crystal, the tall figures, the queen with her crown of fire. Her words were still inside him. He was seen. He was chosen. Chosen for what? The question followed him wherever he went. That evening, as the pale light faded into night, Arun decided to test the mark. He sat cross-legged inside the outpost and closed his eyes. He tried to calm his breathing, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. Slowly, he placed his hand over his chest. At first nothing happened. Then, after a long silence, the warmth spread again, flowing through his arm, down to his hand. The glow brightened under his palm. Suddenly, a voice touched his thoughts. It was not sharp or loud, but smooth, like a stream moving over stone. The words were not in human language, yet he understood. Do not fear. You are awake. Arun gasped, opening his eyes. The glow dimmed at once. He pulled his hand away, heart pounding. His room looked the same, yet he felt as if another presence had been standing beside him. He ran a hand across his face, trying to steady himself. He had lived alone for years, yet never had he felt such closeness to something unseen. Later, while writing in his journal, he heard a faint hum outside. He stopped, pen frozen above the page. The sound was not from his machines. It was deeper, smoother, carrying a strange harmony. He rushed to the window. The sky was empty, but the hum continued. He stepped outside, scanning the stars. The sound faded after a few breaths, leaving only silence. Arun stood under the vast sky, uncertain whether to feel wonder or fear. The next day, he tried to work again. He forced himself to focus on simple tasks, tightening bolts, adjusting sensors, running system checks. But every sound made him glance upward, every shadow made him pause. He felt like a traveler standing at the edge of a great road, waiting for something to appear. That night the dream returned. He was once again inside the Hall of Crystal, but this time the space glowed brighter, as if calling him deeper. The tall figures were still there, watching with eyes of silver. They did not move or speak, but their presence filled the air like heavy silence. The queen stepped forward again. Her crown blazed with fire that did not burn. Arun wanted to speak, but his voice failed. Yet in the dream, words were not needed. Her thoughts touched his mind. You live in silence. You endure the empty road. You carry balance within you. Arun tried to form a question. Why me? Because you listen. Few among your kind can hear. Her gaze softened, and though her face was not human, Arun felt no threat in her presence. She raised her hand once more. Light reached out, touching his chest. The warmth grew stronger than before, flowing through every part of him. His body felt weightless, as if floating in endless sky. You are chosen to walk with us. Arun wanted to ask what it meant, but the dream dissolved before he could. He woke in his bed, breath heavy, heart racing. His chest burned with warmth, the mark shining brighter than ever. This time the glow remained for hours, refusing to fade even when he wrapped himself in a blanket to hide it from his own eyes. Days passed, and the strange signs continued. The hum in the sky returned at night, sometimes soft, sometimes strong. The mark pulsed whenever the sound filled the air. Arun noticed changes within himself too. His thoughts grew sharper. His senses felt stronger. He could hear faint shifts in the wind and notice details in the rocks and soil that he had never cared for before. Even his dreams became clearer, as if guiding him towards something waiting beyond sight. One night, he decided to climb the ridge that rose behind his outpost. It was a place he rarely visited, for the climb was long and the air thin. But the pull inside him grew too strong to ignore. Carrying a small light, he climbed the rocky slope under the glow of distant stars. The journey was tiring, yet he felt energy in his body that carried him forward. When he reached the top, he stopped in awe. The valley stretched below like an endless sea of shadow. Above him, the stars shone brighter than he had ever seen. And there, at the center of the sky, a shape moved. It was vast, darker than the night around it, yet lined with faint silver edges. It was no cloud, no star, no rock. Arun's breath caught. A ship. A vessel too large and too silent to belong to humans. The mark on his chest burned with light, brighter than ever before. The hum filled the air, rolling through the valley like distant thunder. The ship lingered high above, unmoving, watching. Arun stood frozen, his eyes locked on the giant shadow. He whispered to himself, though his voice was lost in the wind. They are here. The ship did not descend, but Arun knew in his heart that it would return. The dream had not been only a dream. The queen was real. Her words were real. And whatever path lay ahead, it had already begun. Arun turned back toward his outpost, his chest glowing like a star. For the first time in years, the silence of the moon no longer felt empty. It felt like a waiting breath before a voice spoke. And somewhere above, hidden in the endless night, the voice of the queen whispered into his thoughts once more. The time is near. Arun could not forget the vision of the vast ship in the sky. Each night he climbed the ridge to look for it again. Sometimes he saw only stars, but sometimes he felt the hum moving in the air, steady and deep, like the heartbeat of something larger than life. The mark on his chest always glowed when the sound returned, and each time it grew harder to deny what he already knew. They were watching him. The days passed with restless energy. Arun still repaired his machines and kept his outpost running, but every task felt like a step before a storm. He wrote in his journal each night, filling pages with his thoughts. He described the dreams of the queen, the silver-eyed figures, and the growing presence above. His words no longer felt like whispers to himself. They felt like a record for someone yet to come, perhaps even for the very beings who had chosen him. One evening, while eating his simple meal, the ground shook. At first it was faint, like a distant quake, but then it grew stronger. Arun ran to the door of his outpost and stepped outside. His eyes widened as the sky burned with light. A massive vessel was descending, its body black as stone, its edges lined with silver that shimmered like water. It was silent, yet its presence filled every corner of the plain. Arun's heart pounded. He had dreamed of this moment, but the reality stole his breath. The ship lowered slowly until it hovered above the ground, its shadow stretching across the plain like a giant wing. No dust rose, no roar of engines shook the air. It moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. A section of the vessel's underside opened, and a beam of pale light touched the ground near Arun's outpost. The light formed a pathway, straight and clear. Arun felt the mark on his chest flare with warmth, urging him forward. He hesitated, fear and wonder battling inside him. But deep down, he knew the choice had already been made. The queen had spoken in his dreams. This was the moment she had promised. With steady steps, Arun walked toward the light. His boots echoed against the stone, but the sound faded as he entered the beam. At once, the world shifted. The ground vanished beneath him, and his body lifted into the air. He felt no weight, no wind, only a calm pull drawing him upward into the waiting vessel. When his feet touched solid ground again, Arun stood inside a chamber unlike anything he had seen. The walls glowed faintly, as if alive, pulsing with soft waves of light. The air carried a scent like fresh rain, though no storm had ever touched this moon. He turned slowly, trying to take in the beauty around him. Figures approached. They were tall, their bodies slender and their movements smooth as flowing water. Their eyes shone silver, just as in his dream. They wore no heavy armor or bright clothing, only simple robes that shimmered with light at every fold. None of them spoke aloud, Yet Arun felt their thoughts pressing gently into his mind. He expected anger, perhaps even hostility, but instead the figures bowed their heads to him. Arun froze, shocked. He had lived as a lonely outpost worker, yet here he stood with beings who treated him as someone of honor. One of them raised a hand, motioning for him to follow. They guided him down a long corridor. The walls shifted color as they walked, changing from pale blue to warm gold. Arun could not tell if the glow came from hidden lights or if the very walls were alive. He touched one gently, and it responded with a ripple of light spreading outward like water disturbed by a stone. At the end of the corridor, wide doors opened. Arun stepped into a hall that matched his dreams. The walls were made of crystal, glowing softly. A high ceiling arched above, filled with flowing patterns of light that moved like living stars. At the center of the hall stood a raised platform, and upon it was a figure he recognized at once. The Queen. Her crown of fire blazed brighter than in his dreams. Her tall form radiated authority, yet her gaze held calm strength. When her eyes of silver met his, Arun felt the air leave his chest. She was real. Everything was real. The Queen stepped forward slowly. The hall fell silent as all the silver-eyed figures bowed. Arun stood frozen, unsure what to do. His mind screamed for him to kneel, to bow, to show respect, but before he could move, the Queen's thoughts entered his mind. Do not kneel. You are seen. You are chosen. Arun's heart raced. His lips trembled as he tried to speak, but the Queen's presence silenced him. She lifted her hand, and the mark on his chest glowed in answer. You carry the sign of harmony. Our dream has touched you. You are called to stand with us. Her words filled his mind, heavy with meaning. Arun swallowed hard, his voice finally breaking through. Why me? I am no leader. I am no warrior. I am just a man who wished for silence. The Queen's expression softened. Her voice came again, calm and steady. Silence is strength. In silence you listen. In silence you endure. You are not empty. You are whole. Arun felt the truth of her words strike deep inside him. All the years of solitude, the long nights under the stars, the endless quiet, none of it had been wasted. It had shaped him, prepared him for this moment. The Queen turned, lifting her gaze to the hall. Her people remained bowed, their eyes glowing faintly. She raised her voice in thought, not only to Arun but to all present. This human stands among us not as stranger, but as chosen. His path is bound to ours. The hall shimmered with light as the silver-eyed figures raised their heads, gazes fixed on Arun. Their silent acceptance filled the chamber like a tide. Arun stood trembling, his chest burning with warmth. For the first time in his life, he felt both small and vast, a single man touched by something far beyond himself. The Queen looked back at him, her gaze firm yet gentle. Your trials will come. Your strength will be tested. But know this, you are no longer alone. Her words sank deep into Arun's heart. The silence he had carried for years seemed to break, replaced by a new bond. He was no longer the lonely sleeper of a forgotten moon. He was chosen by the Queen of a people beyond his understanding. And though fear whispered inside him, another voice rose stronger, the voice of purpose. The hall of crystal was silent after the Queen's words. Arun stood at the center, his heart heavy with fear and wonder. He had never been honored before, never been called by such titles, yet here he was before an alien queen who spoke as though he carried great value. The silver-eyed figures watched him, their faces calm, but he felt the weight of their gaze. The Queen stepped closer, her crown of fire glowing softly. Arun of earth, her voice touched his thoughts, you are chosen, but you must also prove. To walk with us is not to stand in light only. It is to walk through trial. Will you face it? Arun's mouth felt dry. He had lived alone for years, solving only small struggles, machines breaking, pipes leaking, silence pressing too long. Yet this was different. This was a trial set by a queen, witnessed by her people. He looked at her eyes, steady and calm, and slowly nodded. I will face it, he whispered. The queen turned and raised her hand. The hall shifted. The glowing crystal walls rippled, bending like water. A doorway opened, revealing a long passage filled with shifting light. Arun felt the mark on his chest flare, guiding him forward. Go, the queen's voice echoed in his mind. Show them who you are. Arun stepped through the doorway. The passage closed behind him, leaving him in a wide chamber that seemed alive. The walls pulsed with faint light, moving like a heartbeat. Strange shapes appeared and vanished, as though the room itself was watching him. He swallowed hard, his hands trembling at his sides. At once, the chamber changed. The ground shifted under his feet, turning into a path of stone floating in darkness. Around him stretched endless night, filled with stars. Arun looked down, but the stones held firm beneath him. He took a step forward. A voice rose inside his mind, not the queen's but another, calm and cold. First is patience. Stand in silence and endure. The stones beneath his feet began to move apart, creating wide gaps. A rushing wind filled the space, carrying whispers of fear. Arun's chest burned with panic, but he forced himself to breathe. He remembered the years he had lived alone, the long nights when no one spoke, when he had only the sound of his own breath to comfort him. He closed his eyes and stood still. The wind howled louder, but he did not move. He waited, heart steady. Slowly, the wind faded. The stones returned, forming a solid path once more. The voice spoke again. Patience is yours. Now courage. A wall of flame rose before him, stretching high. It moved without smoke, glowing with fierce heat. Arun stepped back, sweat breaking on his forehead. Fear told him to run, but there was nowhere to go. He thought of his quiet life on the moon, the many days he had faced danger with only his own strength, storms of dust, broken machines, long nights of hunger before supplies arrived. He had survived them because he did not give up. He clenched his fists, took a breath, and stepped forward. The fire flared, surrounding him, but it did not burn. Instead, it passed through him like a test of will. His heart pounded, yet he did not stop. When he reached the other side, the fire vanished. The voice returned. Courage is yours. Now honesty. The path stretched into another chamber where a mirror of light appeared before him. Inside the mirror he saw himself, but not as he was now. He saw a version of himself filled with pride and power, standing tall as though he were a king. The mirror self spoke, its voice sharp. You are chosen. Take the crown. Accept greatness. Forget your weakness. Arun stared at the image. Part of him wanted to believe it. For years he had been forgotten, living in silence. Now he stood in a place where a queen had called him worthy. Was it not his chance to rise? But deep inside, he knew the truth. He was no king, no hero shaped by glory. He was just a man who had learned to survive, who had chosen solitude, who listened to the quiet voice of life. He shook his head. I will not lie to myself. I am no ruler. I am only me. The mirror shattered into light, vanishing into the air. The voice returned, warmer than before. Honesty is yours. The trial is complete. The chamber shifted once more. The stars and stones melted away. Arun found himself standing in the hall of crystal again. The silver-eyed figures remained in their places, silent and watching. The queen stood at the center, her gaze fixed on him. When she stepped forward, the hall brightened as though responding to her presence. You have walked the trial, her voice touched his mind, filled with calm strength. Patience, courage, honesty, you carry them all. Where others failed, you endured. The figures around the hall bowed their heads in respect. Arun's chest tightened. He felt unworthy of such honor, yet he could not deny what had happened. The trials had tested more than skill or strength. They had tested the very core of who he was. The queen lifted her hand, and the mark on his chest glowed brighter. This bond is true. You are chosen not for what you own, not for what you command, but for who you are. Do you accept this path? Arun's throat tightened. He thought of his old life, the quiet mornings, the simple repairs, the endless silence. He thought of the dreams that had led him here, the ship that had descended, the beings who now stood before him. His solitude had carried him far, but here was a new road, one he had never expected. Slowly, with steady breath, he answered. I accept. The queen's crown flared with light, filling the hall with brilliance. Her voice rose, not only to him but to all her people. Let it be known. This human walks with us. His worth is proven. His path is bound to ours. The hall trembled with a wave of light as the silver-eyed beings bowed deeply. Arun stood in the center, his chest glowing like fire. Fear and wonder mixed inside him, but above all, a quiet strength rose. He was no longer just the lonely sleeper of a forgotten moon. He had faced trial, and he had endured. And though he did not know what trials lay ahead, he knew one truth: he would not walk them alone. The hall of crystal remained bright long after Arun had completed his trial. The queen stood tall, her crown of fire glowing with calm strength. The silver-eyed people bowed in silence, their respect filling the chamber. Arun felt his chest heavy with a mix of pride and fear. He had endured their test, yet he knew his journey was not finished. Something greater still waited. The queen's voice reached his mind once more. You have proven yourself. But now comes the true burden. You may walk with us, or you may return to your world. The path will not be forced upon you. The choice must be yours. Her words struck Arun deeply. He had not expected freedom in this moment. He thought the dream had already decided everything for him. Yet now, before the queen and her people, she offered him a choice that could change both his life and theirs. The queen stepped closer, her silver eyes fixed on him. Our empire stands at the edge of shadow. Enemies gather beyond our stars. We need strength not only of arms but of spirit. To stand with us is to face danger and burden. If you accept, you will never again walk in silence. If you refuse, you will be returned to your moon, free of blame. Arun's throat tightened. His heart longed for the quiet life he once knew, the mornings of calm routine, the nights of simple stars. Yet another voice rose inside him, the voice of the dream, the voice of purpose. He had been chosen not by chance but by something greater, something he could not explain. He lowered his eyes, remembering his lonely outpost. He had chosen solitude because the noise of people had pressed too hard on his spirit. But even in silence, a part of him had longed for meaning, for proof that his life was not just waiting for the end. Now meaning stood before him, wearing a crown of fire. The queen seemed to read his struggle. Her voice grew softer. I do not demand. I only ask. Your bond is strong, but it is still your own to accept or to set aside. Arun raised his head slowly. If I walk with you, what am I to become? I am no soldier. I am no leader. You will be as you are, the queen replied. That is enough. A man who listens, who endures, who speaks truth, he is stronger than armies. You will not be asked to change your nature, only to carry it with us. Her words struck him with quiet power. For years he had thought his silence was weakness, his solitude a sign that he could not belong. But now she called it strength, a gift that others lacked. The silver-eyed people around the hall watched him with calm stillness. Their gazes carried no anger, no pressure. They simply waited, as though they too respected his choice. Arun closed his eyes. He thought of his journal, filled with words that no one had read. He thought of the glow on his chest, the dreams that had guided him here, the hum of the great ship above his moon. He thought of the queen's eyes, steady and kind, carrying both burden and hope. When he opened his eyes again, his voice was firm. I will walk with you. The hall brightened at his words. The silver-eyed figures bowed deeply, their robes shimmering with light. The queen lifted her hand, and the mark on Arun's chest flared brighter than ever before. Then it is bound. You have chosen freely. You are no longer alone. Her words echoed through him, filling his heart with warmth. Yet alongside the warmth came a heavy weight. He knew his choice meant danger. He knew he would face trials far greater than those of the crystal chamber. Still, his spirit felt steady. For the first time, his solitude had ended not in weakness but in strength. The queen turned to her people. This human has chosen the path of unity. He will walk with us against the shadow. Let it be known, his bond is true. The hall trembled with a wave of light as her people raised their heads. Their silver eyes glowed brighter, reflecting the mark on Arun's chest. A soft sound filled the chamber, not words but a harmony of thought. It was a song without voice, and yet it carried welcome. Arun felt the weight of their acceptance. He was no longer an outsider. He was one of them now, tied not by blood but by choice. Later, when the ceremony ended, the queen guided him through another corridor. The walls here were darker, filled with flowing lines of silver light. She walked beside him in silence for a while, then finally spoke. You feel the burden already? Arun nodded. Yes. My life was simple before. Now it feels heavy. That is the truth of choice, the queen said. To remain silent is easy. To step forward is heavy. But weight gives meaning. Without it, life drifts. Her words sank deep into him. He thought of the many days on the moon when time had slipped by like sand, empty and endless. Yes, it had been easy, but it had also been without meaning. Now, though fear pressed on him, he felt the strength of a path. They entered a chamber with wide windows that opened into the stars. Arun stopped, his breath caught. The view stretched farther than he had ever seen. Endless stars glowed like rivers of fire, and among them drifted ships of silver light, graceful and silent. This was their empire, vast and beautiful. The queen stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the stars. This is what you protect now. Not only my people, but the bond we share. Your choice will carry weight for all who live under this sky. Arun swallowed hard. I do not know if I am strong enough. The queen turned to him, her silver eyes steady. Strength is not the absence of fear. Strength is walking despite it. Her words gave him a calm he had not expected. He placed his hand over the glowing mark on his chest, feeling its warmth. It was no longer just a sign. It was a promise, a burden, and a guide. The silence stretched between them, filled not with emptiness but with quiet understanding. Arun knew his life had changed forever. He had left behind the lonely sleeper of the moon. He was chosen, and now he had chosen in return. Whatever shadow waited ahead, he would face it. The vast empire of silver ships moved through the stars like a great river. Arun stood at the window of the Queen's vessel, his eyes wide as he watched the endless lights. For the first time in his life, he felt the immensity of the galaxy. He was no longer a lonely man on a forgotten moon. He was part of something greater. But the Queen's words echoed in his mind. A shadow was coming. Enemies beyond the stars threatened to tear this empire apart. And Arun, though only a man, was now bound to their fate. The Queen entered the chamber, her robes glowing faintly in the starlight. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried weight. "It has begun," she said. Arun turned to her. "The enemy." She nodded. "They have crossed into our border. Scouts bring news of their approach. Their fleet grows like a storm. Soon they will be here." Arun felt his chest tighten. He had known this moment was coming, but hearing it aloud filled him with dread. "What can I do in such a war? I am only one man." The Queen placed her hand on his shoulder. "You are not asked to be more. You are asked to be yourself. You will see what this means when the moment comes." Her words gave little clarity, yet her calm presence steadied him. Soon after, alarms rang through the vessel. The silver-eyed soldiers hurried through the corridors, their armor gleaming, their steps sure and silent. Arun followed the Queen to the command hall. There, a vast screen displayed the stars ahead. Red lights marked the enemy fleet, moving fast, spreading wide like claws ready to strike. The Queen stood at the center, her voice firm. "Prepare defenses. Hold the line. We do not break." Her people moved with discipline, their hands gliding over controls, their thoughts linked in silent unity. Arun stood to the side, feeling out of place, yet he could not look away from the sight of the enemy ships. They were black and sharp, like blades cutting across the void. Their design was different from the smooth silver vessels of the Queen. These ships seemed alive, their surfaces shifting, as though hungry. Arun shivered. These were not foes who sought peace. They sought conquest. The first clash came quickly. Bright beams lit the dark sky. Explosions burst like suns, shaking the vessel. Arun grabbed a rail to keep his balance. The silver fleet moved with grace, but the enemy pressed hard, their numbers overwhelming. "Shields at half," a commander said. The Queen's voice rang through the hall. "Hold steady. Do not yield." Her people obeyed without fear. Arun watched them fight with a unity he had never seen among humans. They trusted one another fully, their thoughts flowing together like water. Yet even with such unity, the enemy pressed harder. The Queen's fleet began to fall back. Arun's heart pounded. His mind screamed that he was useless here, that he had no place among warriors and queens. But the mark on his chest burned hot, as if urging him to stand. Suddenly, a blast struck near the vessel, and the hull shook violently. Sparks flew, and a section of the wall cracked. A heavy silence fell. "They are targeting the command vessel," a soldier said. The Queen lifted her hand. "Stay calm. We endure." Arun looked at her, his chest burning. He felt something stir deep inside him, a thought that seemed too simple yet too true. "Why are we meeting them here?" he asked aloud. The soldiers glanced at him, confused. The queen tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Arun pointed at the screen. "They expect you to stand and defend this line. But humans do not fight like this. When we are outnumbered, we move, we strike where they are weak, not where they are strong. You cannot face a storm by standing still. You bend, and you wait for it to pass. Then you strike back." The hall went silent. The queen studied him closely, her silver eyes thoughtful. "You speak of a different way," she said softly. Arun nodded, his voice growing steadier. "Your unity is strength, but it makes you predictable. The enemy knows how you will move. But if you break pattern, if you fight as we fight, you may turn their numbers against them." The queen's gaze sharpened. She turned to her commanders. "Pull back to the nebula sector. Break formation. Scatter as he says. Let them chase." Her people hesitated for only a moment, then obeyed. Orders spread through the fleet. The silver ships broke their perfect lines, scattering into the nearby nebula, where clouds of gas and dust glowed faintly. The enemy followed, believing their prey was weakened. They pursued into the nebula, their black ships swarming like predators. But inside the clouds, the silver vessels moved with new purpose. They struck from angles the enemy did not expect, vanishing into the dust, then striking again. The storm of numbers began to break apart. Arun watched in awe as the tide shifted. Where before the silver fleet had been pressed back, now the enemy began to falter. One by one, their black ships were torn apart, their hunger turning to confusion. The queen's voice rang strong. "Now! Strike at their core." The silver ships surged as one, hitting the largest enemy vessel. Beams of light cut through its dark hull, and in a burst of flame, it shattered. The rest of the enemy fleet wavered, then broke, retreating back into the stars. Silence filled the hall. The battle was over. Arun stood still, his breath heavy. He had done nothing with his hands, nothing with weapons. Yet his words, his way of thinking, had turned the tide. The queen stepped closer to him. Her silver eyes glowed with pride. "You see what I meant," she said softly. "You were not asked to be more than yourself. What you carry is enough." Arun lowered his eyes, humbled. "I am only a man." "And that is your strength," the queen replied. "You see what we cannot. Alone, you were lost. With us, you give direction. That is why you were chosen." The mark on Arun's chest glowed warm once more. For the first time, he felt not only chosen but needed. The solitude of his old life was gone, replaced by a bond that stretched across stars. The queen raised her hand, her voice carrying to her people. "The shadow is beaten today, not by blade or shield, but by a voice of difference. Let this be remembered. Let it be honored." The silver-eyed soldiers bowed deeply. Arun felt their respect, not forced, but freely given. His heart swelled. The battle was only the beginning. The shadow would return, stronger and darker. Yet now Arun knew he could stand with them. He was no longer a lonely sleeper. He was part of the light. The stars outside were calm again, but Arun knew peace was only for a moment. The shadow had been pushed back, not destroyed. Somewhere in the dark, it waited and gathered strength. The Queen's fleet repaired its wounds, the silver ships glowing faintly as workers moved across their hulls. Inside, The soldiers walked with quiet pride, their faces calm after victory. Arun stood near the great window of the command hall, his eyes tracing the endless sky. The mark on his chest still glowed, warm like a steady fire. He touched it lightly, remembering the queen's words. He was chosen not for power of arms, but for the strength of being human. The queen entered the hall. Her steps were quiet, yet the air seemed to shift around her. She carried the same crown of fire, though its glow had dimmed with her weariness. Still, her silver eyes shone with calm purpose. She came to stand beside Arun, her gaze fixed on the stars. "You carry the weight of this battle with you," she said softly. Arun nodded. "I keep thinking it was chance. That I only spoke what I knew. But somehow it changed everything." The queen turned her eyes to him. "There is no chance in truth. You spoke as you are, and it gave us what we lacked. That is not chance. That is meaning." Her words settled in his heart, but another weight pressed there as well. The battle was won, yet his path forward was unclear. Was he to stay here forever among these people? Was he to return to his lonely moon and watch the sky in silence again? The queen seemed to read his thoughts. "You wonder where you belong now. Your heart is divided." Arun lowered his eyes. "I do not know my place anymore. My old life feels small, but it was mine. Here I feel purpose, yet it is heavy. And I am not of your people." The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke with gentle strength. "The bond between us does not bind you in chains. You chose to stand with us, and you may choose again. If your spirit longs to return, I will honor it. If your spirit longs to remain, I will welcome it. The final choice is yours." Her words made his heart tremble. He had thought the path was already set, but now it returned to him, heavy yet free. Later, Arun walked the corridors of the vessel. He passed silver-eyed workers who bowed to him with respect. He entered the gardens at the heart of the ship, where strange trees glowed with soft light and streams of silver water flowed in silence. Here, away from battle, he let his thoughts wander. He sat beneath one of the glowing trees. The memories of his moon returned to him: the quiet mornings, the sound of wind against the stone, the endless solitude. He remembered how he had once believed that silence was safety. Yet now he knew it was also emptiness. He thought of the queen's gaze, the trust of her people, the song of unity that had filled the hall when he made his choice. Here he was not just alone with his thoughts. Here his voice carried weight. But he also feared. What if he failed them? What if his difference brought harm instead of strength? What if the shadow returned stronger and his words were no longer enough? As he struggled with doubt, he heard a faint sound. A group of children with silver eyes entered the garden, their laughter light as they played near the water. One of them noticed him and approached shyly. "You are the human," the child said with wide eyes. Arun smiled faintly. "Yes. I am." The child looked at his chest. "The mark shines. You are one of us now." The simple words struck Arun deeply. In them was no question, no doubt. Only acceptance. The children returned to their play, their laughter echoing in the quiet garden. Arun watched them for a long time, and slowly his heart grew calm. He realized that belonging was not about blood or origin. It was about choice, about bonds freely made. When he returned to the queen, he found her standing once more before the great window of stars. She turned as he entered, her eyes searching his face. "You have walked your thoughts," she said. Arun nodded. "Yes. I have walked them, and I have found my answer." Her gaze did not waver. "Speak it." Arun took a slow breath. I choose to stay. Not because I have no place to return to, but because this is the place where I can give. My old life was silence. Here I have voice, and it matters. I do not know what will come, but I will walk with you. The queen's silver eyes softened, and for the first time, a quiet smile touched her lips. Then so it shall be. You are of us now, not by birth, but by will. Your choice binds stronger than blood. The mark on Arun's chest flared bright, filling the hall with light. The queen raised her hand, and the glow spread through the vessel, carrying the message to her people. Across the ship, voices rose not of sound, but of thought. A song of welcome, of unity, of promise. Arun felt it flow into him, wrapping him in warmth. He was no longer an outsider. He was one of them. The queen spoke above the song. Together we will face the shadow. Together we will endure. And when the darkness comes again, we will not stand alone. Arun stood beside her, his heart steady. For the first time, his solitude had ended not by chance, but by choice. He had been a sleeper in silence, but now he was awake in light. The stars stretched endless before him, filled with danger and promise. And Arun knew, whatever trials came, he would meet them not as a lonely man, but as the chosen of a queen and the voice of a people. The final choice was made. The path was set. He would not walk it alone.